what's the one piece of career advice you wish someone had given you when you were starting out?
It's difficult to pick one. I've been thinking about this prior to the call, to be honest. It's really difficult to pick one. I suppose if I had to pick one, I mean, there's probably three which come to my mind straight away, but if I had to pick one, it's feedback. Like, it's gold dust. So, like, you got to encourage it, welcome it, like, help others with it as well. Like, for me, it's like, it's how you understand how how you're perceived by others and their perceptions, their reality. It doesn't matter if it's wrong or not. That's the reality to them. So, and everyone has like unknown unknowns, just the stuff you just don't know about yourself and you don't see about yourself as well. The only way to really understand those things and how they impact on others is through feedback. You know, it's something we're quite bad at generally, especially inside of tech teams, to be brutally honest. So in previous companies, I've created training courses on it for people because we're, you know, in smaller companies, we haven't had budgets for training and outside companies in. So I've just created training courses myself and taken my teams through it. And like, there's loads of models. There's obviously loads of industry standard models like your SBI model and things like that. But a lot of the information out there focuses on how it's given, not how feedback's received. And for me, it lives or dies on how it's received.
Yeah.
You know, a defensive person just puts the person who's giving the feedback off doing it ever again.
I think that's something that probably people don't think about as well. If feedback's reciprocated quite badly, they're going to never want to give them the feedback again, are they really?
Yeah. It is, because that person who's giving you feedback is generally stepping outside the comfort zone a little bit and doing it.
And probably just trying to help, really. People like to help people, don't they?
Yeah. And also, it's really important to do it for the good things as well as the bad things. If you're just doing it about the bad things, it has negative connotations when it happens. So it's really, really important to do about the positive things as well. And for me, there's other stuff missing from the models as well. There's an assumption. All the models talk about timeliness of feedback, and it's really important to not wait weeks or months on things like that. But equally, the person you're going to give feedback to might be completely the wrong time for them to hear this. You know, they might be in the middle of a really stressful thing at home or incredibly busy at work, and they just haven't got the time to sit and actually listen to you properly and work through a problem. So, you know, organising the time to do that's really important. And then the other thing I think is missing is ending it with a question or a request, because without that, it's sort of quite easily can just be deemed as criticism. But you know, if it's a question or request, and that can be if it's positive as well, you know, like do more of this, it's great, you know, or share this with other people so they can learn from you. But you know, without that, there's not really a real purpose to it for me. So but I think that the really important bits is the receiving of it, to be honest. And like when I created that training course, maybe 60-70% of the material around the training was how to receive feedback. It wasn't how to give it.
Really?
So the 30% was like how to give feedback. So yeah.
Off topic a little bit, how did people sort of take the training course that you made?
They loved it, to be honest. I was quite surprised because like I spent a long time prepping for it and things like that. But I was quite surprised how well they took it, because we ended up doing like practical exercises of having 3 people working together in a breakout room on a Zoom call, essentially. Had several breakout rooms, groups of 3, one person giving feedback, another person receiving, and a third person observing. And then they would give at the end of a session of feedback, they would give the other 2 feedback on how they'd done, both giving and receiving feedback. And then they all swapped roles. And we started off doing it on really, really small things. So it wasn't that sort of important or that likely to upset people. Then when they got in the rhythm of it, like, it was great, because we started giving each other feedback all the time. And I think, like, you know, communication or feedback, hierarchical boundaries shouldn't matter for that. Anyone should be able to speak to anyone. And give them feedback. It's really valuable. So, but yeah, it made a massive difference to us as a team, to be honest. We actually saw it in our metrics as well, which was the thing that astounded me, was how much of an impact it actually had. So we saw it like a significant improvement in our throughput of work off the back of it. Now, it wasn't just that. We did some other changes at the same time. But
probably played quite a big part, though.
It did, yeah, because people are much more willing to just grab someone because there was a bit of a problem, to solve it there and then, rather than waiting to the next retrospective or the next stand-up to have that conversation. Just everything started happening faster. Yeah. And I think if you'll allow me, I'll mention the other 2 quickly as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Things, yeah. So I think second would probably be say yes to things that scare you.
I love that one.
Yeah, because it's something my dad said to me actually when I was younger. I was offered an opportunity and I was worried because I thought, I've never done this before, I don't know if I can do it. And he was like, look, if you don't try things, you're never going to know, and you're never going to understand what your boundaries are. You're never going to understand if that thing would have given you more career satisfaction or would have actually made you personally more fulfilled, or if it's not right for you. So just say yes to everything.
I sometimes think it's better to regret the things that you do rather than the things that you don't, and always thinking, oh, what if I would have done that?
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. Yeah, because you'll never know if you didn't do something. You'll always have that nagging doubt: could I have done it? Would it have been great? What about if this happened? What about if that happened? But at least if you've lived through it, you can understand what you did well, what you didn't do well, what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy. It might be the right thing for you, might not, but it sort of doesn't matter either way as long as you learn from it. And the last thing is probably speak up. So it's something I've learned to do over my career is speak up more. You might not be the most experienced person in the room, but that doesn't mean your perspective isn't the most valuable. It's often fresh eyes which bring the greatest perspective to things, but equally, people who have diversity of thought from other people in the room, that's how you pressure test things, and that's how you get better ideas and better solutions, and that's how you work as a better team, things like that. So yeah, they're the key things for me.
Can you share a pivotal moment in your career journey that made a significant impact?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one as well. My mind went to a few things straight away. So it wasn't really one moment for me. It started from one thing. So it started from a manager of mine giving me a book to read. And it was maybe, must be 12, 13 years ago, maybe he gave me a book to read. But from that, there's been a collection of moments which are the combination of the learnings from 4 books and 1 TED Talk. Now, I've read loads of other books as well, but I always go back to these 4 in that TED Talk and reread them or re-listen to them because they've changed my perspective on lots of things like teams, culture, how to actually get genuine results inside of teams. I'd often heard questions said inside of companies, not necessarily at my teams, but other teams, sometimes at my teams, which was, there's a lack of accountability. And I'd always struggled with that sentence because I thought, well, how do you get accountability? What's the process you go to get that from people? And the book that my manager gave me gave me, just laid it out for me. And I was straight away, it was just a light bulb moment. I was like, right, I get this. I totally understand this now. And it sort of resonated with my core values as well.
What was the book called?
Yeah, it's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. It's brilliant. So I always recommend it for anyone. And then the other 3 books which have really resonated with me have been Will It Make the Boat Go Faster by Ben Hunt Davies and Harriet Beveridge. Which is fantastic as well. I don't particularly like rowing, but that's about an Olympic rowing team from the UK and how they formed as a team and became better than the sum of their parts. But it's fascinating. It's each chapter is split into 2. It's written by the Ben Hunt Davies, who was one of the people in the boat. Him talking about what they did, and then the second half of the chapter is Harriet Beveridge writing about why that worked and why
that's quite interesting and different perspectives throughout.
Yeah, and she's looking at it from an organizational context, how you could apply the same things inside of an organization. So it's fascinating. Definitely recommend anyone to read that. And the other 2 are Fish. It's called Fish: A Remarkable Way to Boost Morale and Improve Results by Stephen London. That's great. It's another book, much like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's sort of written like a fable, so it's very, very easy to read and not very long. So it's really easy to consume. And the last one's The Manager's Path, and that's a bit different. The first 3 are sort of about culture and team building and things like that. The Manager's Path by Camille Fournier is sort of a guide about how you move from individual contributor to a manager in a technical role, and then how you move from a manager of individual contributors to a manager of managers. And it's really fascinating because I read that after I'd gone through all of that.
Really?
And I wish I'd read it first because there's so many sort of hints in there that a lot of which I'd learned through doing over the years, but some of which still hadn't dawned on me after a number of years of being in those sorts of roles. So yeah, and the TED Talk, it's amazing. This one I've watched this so many times, by a lady called Margaret Heffernan, and that's called "Why It's Time to Forget the Pecking Order at Work." Most people refer to it as super chickens, though. So if you search for Margaret Heffernan super chickens,
I'll have a listen to that one.
You'll find it. But it's brilliant, amazing TED Talk by her. It's quite old, but all of it still really resonates. It's often something when I've joined new companies or I'm forming new teams, I'll often play that video for them as part of our sort of forming, and I'll talk to them about some of the theories and 5 dysfunctions of the team, and some of the stuff from Will It Make the Boat Go Faster as well. I won't necessarily be referencing exactly that it's from there, but a lot of these have sort of like they all sort of resonate with my values around being sort of people being the most important asset any business have, and any leader. A lot of people talk about servant leadership and things like that, but I look at any leadership role as if you're doing your job to your best ability, you shouldn't be required anymore. You should be able to step away and nothing changes. It's fine. It just runs smoothly. And I had a previous manager who talked about you need to be the glue between everything, but over time you need to be so good at that the glue doesn't break. It's not brittle. When you step away, it just stays there after you've gone. I love that. But yeah, so all of that stuff. They're all things that have really had a massive impact on my. Especially because I spent a number of years as a very technically focused roles, and then I made a conscious decision to try and move into managerial roles to see if that was right for me or not. And
were you quite on the fence then when you were first looking at more of like a managerial role?
Yeah, I think I did it for selfish motivations to start with. To be brutally honest, it was a promotion, and it was, and I did it because I was trying to push myself. But I quickly realised in that role, it's not really about you, it's about the others and
everyone else.
And I love that. That really resonated with me. So I think that's why I've enjoyed it so much, is because I enjoy helping other people. I think my biggest career success is, I get asked this a few times by people, and it's always 2 people I've helped with their careers a little bit. They're both brilliant people, and I only help them a tiny bit, but just going, knowing that you've helped them a little bit, tiny bit of help towards what they've achieved so far and what they're going to achieve is just brilliant. That's the most satisfying thing I could ever have in my career. So,
how do you approach challenges and setbacks in your professional life, and what's your go-to strategy for overcoming them?
Yeah, it really does depend on the challenge or setback. It's sort of somewhat contextual, but there's always some things I do to truly understand that challenge or setback. I think understanding root cause is really important of it. I think anyone in a tech role is sort of hardwired to look for root causes of things, because what we do, we're looking for problems in our code and our tests or whatever. So I think there's that. And I think if it's conflict related, even with an individual number of people, the challenge or setback, ensuring everyone's got the same information and similar or same understanding of that information is really important. I normally think most conflict comes from exactly that. It's different information or different understanding of that information. Now, not all conflict comes from that, but a lot of it does. And then I think having a positive reaction to challenges, setbacks, really important too. So I think in the early years of my career, if you ask people I worked with that have said I was a pessimist, and I wallowed on things. When I had a challenge or a setback, I wallowed on it, and it was sort of, I didn't actually take any positive action around it. And I think if you ask people over the last recent years, maybe last 12 years or so, people would, I've asked people sometimes, and most of them say I'm an optimist.
Really?
And I'm not an optimist by nature, but it's not by chance either. So I ask myself a question, which is, what can I do about it? And just the act of that turns it into a positive thing for me, because I'm problem solving, or I'm taking positive action rather than just wallowing on it. So that really helps, because then you're doing something about it. And then that coupled with understanding what's inside of your circle of control or your circle of influence or what sits outside of it, I find really helpful for dealing with challenges and setbacks. Because something's within your control, great, you can do something about it. Circle of influence, great, you can influence it. But if it's outside of that, then, a lot of people talk about control the controllables. And that's really what they're talking about, is like the things inside your circle of control or influence. Like, deal with those and don't worry about the rest. That's really easy to say. And actually, the same manager who bought me the 5 dysfunctional team, he said that to me. He said to me, look, JP, control the controllables. Don't worry about the other stuff. And it was all well and good him saying it to me. And it was great he said it to me. It was useful. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't switch my mind off the things outside because there were still problems for me and my people. So I couldn't just forget about them because I couldn't do anything about them because there were still problems and they were still impacting us. And it was my manager after that. Fantastic gentleman actually, called Doug. Amazing. He helped me go through a process where I could actually understand those sorts of things and try and get them out of my mind. Now, it worked differently for different people. It's quite a simple process for me. I'd basically just write them all down on a Trello board and assign them to someone else. And the key thing Doug said to me was, he said, look, assign them all to me. Yeah. He was like, but you've got to assume that I'm going to fail. He was like, because if you assume I'm going to fail, you're going to start thinking positively and making more workarounds and negating this thing. And if I come back,
quite a good way to think about it, really.
Yeah. And he was like, and if I'm successful and I come back and I'm successful, it's just even better for you. So yeah, I think a lot of the challenge and setback is really just understanding, like I said, it's the root cause of it. It's understanding why that challenge and setback is there and what can you do about it. Yeah. And then actually taking positive action around it. And that's not just being blindly positive about things, because there's some things you can't be positive about, and I'm not a blindly positive person, but I do try to look for the positive actions that can be taken from any situation.